pity will is it not our people to bring so much shame upon
Destiny awaits.
The story of Dick Penderyn will be the first to take to the stage post-lockdown in Wales. The play at Neath Port Talbot's Princess Royal Theatre will be the first time audiences will watch actors tread the boards since COVID restrictions came into place.
As lockdown was easing out, it was about a month before we were due to open the show. We'd rehearsed for about 6 months. And at that time, under COVID restrictions, even rehearsals were difficult, but we managed that, so there's no issues with all of that, and we had a show. We had a show ready to go live in the Princess Royal at the end of July in the summer of 2021. Now, when I was younger, I used to race motocross, and when I was younger, I was pretty okay. I was pretty good at motocross, riding motorbikes. And a couple of summers before that, one of my old friends, old motocross colleagues, got me back on a bike after 30 years. We had a reunion and I went and I spent the afternoon up in the Midlands, up in the West Midlands, with my friends and had a ride on a bike, first time for 30 years. And just before the show opened in the Princess Royal, I was invited again to a second reunion. So I went up and I jumped on a bike and about the 4th lap into riding, it wasn't a race, it was just messing around and having a go. I had a bit of a crash. And a bit of a crash, I mean, I ended up in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham with multiple injuries and really didn't know where I was.
It was, it must have been July 2021, and I think it was one day I had a text message off Amy Beth, one of the girls who was already in the cast, sort of vaguely explaining the circumstance of what had happened, that somebody had been ill, and that they needed somebody to come in on the project and in a very small space of time. So I had availability, I didn't really have anything on, so I said yes, let me have a chat with whoever it is, and then she obviously then passed my details on to Stuart, who an hour later I had a phone call from, and it was it all happened quite quickly, to be honest with you, but Stuart sort of explained the situation, that somebody was in a sort of serious accident and that they really needed somebody to come on board in a quick amount of time, with 3 weeks. And I said, yeah, why not? Do you know what I mean? Sounds like it was going to be fun. Stuart explained the project to me. And I think I came along that Sunday for the first rehearsal. I think it was, I got the script and then came along that Sunday and sort of started from there, really.
So after I had the little crash on the motocross bike it was the 26th of June 2021. I ended up, as I said, in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. My injuries, my injuries were, I fractured 3 vertebrae. I fractured my sternum. I broke my shoulder blade. I've done some nerve damage to my right hand. I broke 14 ribs, 8 on one side, 3 in the back and 3 on the other side. And one of those ribs also punctured my lung. So my little crash done quite a bit of damage to a 54-year-old body, and that was the problem.
With the lines, it's always a difficult one sometimes. I'm neurodiverse, I'm dyslexic myself, and sometimes lines can be difficult to learn. I think even though I'd just come out of drama school the year before, I'd come out of the back of you're constantly learning new things every week at drama school in terms of like, you know, can you prepare this for next week? Can you prepare that for next week? So I sort of got into the routine of being able to sort of quickly learn lines and sort of be able to skim learn things, and then sort of when you're in the room, being able to sort of pad all of that out. And I often find that when I'm in the room and once I know what my blocking is, or, you know, that type of thing, and I'm a bit clearer on my intentions, that sort of the lines then sort of become learning the lines becomes a byproduct of all of that extra work that you do. In terms of what I did for this project, I think it was, you know, I didn't have any other projects at that point in time, so I was able to sort of give my full attention to it. You know, I learn lines by just reading them out and repeating them and repeating them and repeating them, and then sort of then finding my intentions and sort of what the character's thinking sort of around that. It was a short period of time because even though it was 3 weeks till the show, you know, as an actor you want to be off book. You want to be off book by 3 weeks before the show. Do you know what I mean? You want to be able to play in the room. So there was that little challenge when I first went in of I'm a bit restricted here because of the script, so I knew that I had to sort of learn those lines quickly. So I think I sort of set myself, let's give myself this first week to learn the lines, and then once the lines are in, we can sort of play a bit further from there. And, you know, by this point, the whole cast, we were doing runs of the show, so I'm sliding into something where, with a script in hand, when we're sort of running the show start to finish. And
your mind starts racing, and I'd work myself up into a bit of a dilemma in my head. Do I, don't I? Do I ring Stuart up and say, look Stu, I'm out, sorry mate, but I can't do it? Or do I see how the week goes and how the operations go and take it from there? My nature is to bust a gut, to do anything and everything I can to complete things. And I'm glad I went that way. I didn't make a decision straight away. I knew I'd let people down, or I potentially let people down, but I was so glad of everybody's support, not just Stuart's and the production team, but all the other, you know, people involved in the project, and wider than the project. You know, it goes without saying, you know, my family and friends and stuff like that. So on the one hand, I knew I'd potentially let people down. On the other hand, I knew if I could physically do it, I could do it. And I just needed to kind of get those two closer to each other. And that week, lying physically incapable of getting out of bed, and I do take my hat off to anybody who's got serious illnesses or significant injuries and lying in a hospital bed, because it's certainly, I don't mind saying, it's changed my outlook on life. And I don't say that for the camera. I do not say that for any impact. I say that in all honesty. It's changed my outlook on life. My outlook on life now has completely changed, and I am so glad that whilst I could have let people down, I was supported by the team enough so that I could contribute.
I was there one Sunday, and they're like, oh, Alad's coming today. Alad's coming today, and he said that he is going to be involved in the project. Now, for someone who'd never met him, and I'd come in and sort of been offered his part, that was quite a difficult one, because I was like, look, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I'm happy to help out. You know, if Alad wants to go on stage, then so be it. You know, he was given the part, and that's his part, so I don't want to take that away from anybody. So, but what was lovely was when he came into the room, he instantly came over to me, wanted to have a chat. He didn't make me feel sort of awkward or isolated about the situation in any way. So that was really, really nice. And then I think about a week and a half to go to the show, Alad then turns around and sort of says, I'm going to be okay to do the show. And I was like, right, okay, that's fine. You know, I've obviously started learning the lines, sort of got them under my belt. But again, I don't want to step on your toes. You've been wanting to do this for so many months, and it's only right that you get that first opportunity. I think then we spoke to Stuart, and Stuart was like, look, I want you both to do the show. And initially I was like, oh, how's that going to work? Do you mean? But then it was sort of, you know, we're going to split the shows between you. So then what that then meant was that Alad then had the opening night, and he went on, and I think he was still very injured at that point, you know, his chest or whatever, you know, you could tell backstage that he was sort of putting on a brave face, and that, but you could see that he still had pain there. So I just said, look, I'll be in the theatre the nights that I'm not performing. You know, if anything happens, I'll chuck the costume on and I'll go on for you.
Then there was a picture. Now, I'd been told, oh, somebody's going to some artist up in London is going to do a picture of Lord Crauchete with my face on it. I said, "Oh, right, fine." And then one day it turned up, and it was huge. I couldn't believe it. If you research Lord Crauchete on the internet, you'll see a portrait of him, as you would with a lot of 18th century Mughals, and he is there standing very gracefully and proud, sort of one elbow leaning, I think it is, and all of a sudden, there he was in the rehearsal room with my face on his body, but really done cleverly. It really took me back. The one thing that did happen was my wife said, "We're not having that over our fireplace."
Well over 50 years since I actually walked on stage and performed in a costume and to do a part. And the part I did 50 years ago was very small. This was quite a bit bigger, not massive by any means. And having worked in the Princess Royal Theatre for 24 years on the technical side of things, to be in the dressing rooms, getting dressed, to go down onto stage, to perform in front of an audience, was a bit surreal.
So yeah, it was a massive role to play. Huge role. You know, Richard Lewis, his story is forgotten by too many. It should be, he's a massive part of our Welsh history, massive part of our working class history, a massive part of our area's history. So that pressure to do that man justice, and to do that man, to do a good job and portray his story the best I could. I wouldn't say it's a pressure, it's a privilege, and the weight of the privilege was more. The weight of the privilege and the weight of the expectation of people of Port Talbot, of Aberavon.
And I think that another thing that was quite appealing about it was the fact that it was a community sort of led project. I had never sort of experienced a community led project before. I'd done youth theatre, I'd done a couple of professional jobs, but I'd never sort of done anything where we sort of have people from all walks of life. And I think that was sort of one of the really interesting things coming into the room then, rehearsing with people, and it's like, oh, this person used to be an accountant, or this person was a solicitor or a teacher. So it was sort of really nice to sort of be in a room of a group of people who necessarily wouldn't sort of do acting as their first thing, but sort of came together as a community to tell a story that was about that community.
Just thinking back to that week of the world premiere of Iniquity Camwedd, I think I could just summarise it as being bonkers. It just seems like a different world now, for me to think that my name will be on those scripts as Amy Beth McCarthy, Morfydd Mortimer, it's amazing, isn't it? I remember being in the theatre and we were doing the get-in and having to socially distance the seats. And the first production that we did, I remember looking out into the crowd and seeing one person there or two people there from the same household. And because of the hall that we used, the seats were so spaced out, but everyone was just so engrossed in the story that we had to say.
Looking back, it was just wanted to do the best we could for everyone in the show, and for everyone who came to watch us, all our family and friends, the general public that came to watch the first show post-pandemic. The proudness, though, not just me, but I could see in everyone else that was involved in the show, to what we achieved that week was unbelievable. All week, every night, every day of that week, it was surreal. It built up every day, and I think it showed every night on stage just what it meant to people.
This energy of people who were excited to be getting back to normal, some kind of normality after COVID, but also looking forward to the story, or in some cases seeing their family back on stage, seeing their friends back on stage, and during the actual performance. So I came on at one of the very beginning parts, and then I was on towards the very end, and the energy was kind of changing. You could see people have been taken on this journey, and it had gone from sort of excitement into focus and sort of understanding of what actually this story was telling them. You know, these events that actually happened.
Performance was actually quite surreal in some respects, because the last show I had done, I played Joe Casey in a musical Our House in the Princess Royal Theatre, and then to come back on stage a year and a half later, almost 2 years, to play Donald Black in Iniquity Camwedd in the same theatre but with half of an audience there, not so much because there was lack of audience but because of the social distancing protocols, made us all on stage realise how lucky we were to be some of the first people in Wales back on stage, and then to add to that, for it to be a world premiere of a play, of a piece of theatre, of such an important story that I've always been interested in, I've talked about since the play. It was quite a surreal experience, and we could all sense it was a big cast, big crew, and we all had that one sense of that pride of being able to share such an important story of Welsh history, but also be able to perform something that's never been seen before, never been done before, for the first people to do it, and also after lockdown and the COVID outbreak and the pandemic, is all come almost in, everything came into one almost, as for us as performers to feel that sense of pride and that enjoyment of performing on stage again.
Well, the week of the performances, you could really sense that something special was happening. There was a real buzz around the town, around the area. There was a real sense that we were doing something very, very special, and I suppose that hit home to everybody, because everybody's performances were raised, and even though it was difficult circumstances, and we could see that there was depleted crowds, you know, the audience, it didn't diminish from the performances at all. Everybody was on top form, and it was something that will live with me for the rest of my life.
Stuart, he was rallying this is actually during the play, rallying everyone together, and he's got a pitchfork, and he dips the pitchfork in some blood, and he hoists it up into the air. And I seen that in rehearsal when they talked about it, and I knew that that photo had to be taken at that time. It couldn't be a photograph that was staged. It had to be in the moment to really capture that.
This is Beatrice, and I was heavily pregnant during the world premiere of Iniquity, and it was a very stressful time because she was due on the 4th of August and the world premiere was at the end of July. So after every performance, Stuart was ringing me to check that I hadn't got into labour. Yes, it was a very stressful time. And I stayed with my parents during the week of the performance, because just in case something happened. And then here she is. Say hiya to the camera. Up there, look. Where's Daddy? Hi.
Of 1831, 10,000 workers marched as one. An insurrection had begun to end the debt of slavery. Iron workers and miners came, and labourers to break the chains, united in their common claim.